In the 1930s, doctors didn't just tolerate hot dogs, they prescribed them. That's right. At a time when people were leeching themselves for headaches and thought cigarettes were good for digestion, the American medical establishment decided hot dogs were the future of health food. You'd wake up in a hospital bed after surgery and find one waiting on your tray. Not as a joke, not as a punishment, but as a nutritionally approved meal. Imagine recovering from appendicitis and your nurse walks in, holding a bunless frankfurter like it's a vitamin shot. Even medical journals co-signed it. Why? Because hot dogs were soft, calorie-dense, and required almost zero chewing, making them the ideal food for people who could barely keep down Jell-O. Welcome to the weird world where meat tubes were medicine, and America absolutely ate it up. To understand how we got here, you have to understand how messed up nutrition science was in the early 20th century. Back then, calories were everything. Forget fiber, forget additives, forget whatever the meat was actually made of. If it gave you energy, boom, health food. And hot dogs? Oh, they delivered. These things were calorie bombs wrapped in protein mystery and sodium ambition. The logic went like this. People recovering from surgery need calories. Hot dogs have calories. Therefore, hot dogs equal healing. Genius. But it wasn't just hospitals. Public schools began putting hot dogs on lunch menus. Nursing homes served them to the elderly. Dietitians recommended them for people with digestive issues. One 1940s pamphlet said hot dogs were great for invalids, children, and busy mothers. That's right. The 3 stages of life where you're most vulnerable to marketing, or choking hazards. In 1942, the American Medical Association's Council on Foods approved processed meats, stating they were acceptable for institutional use. In other words, they greenlit feeding mystery meat tubes to patients, prisoners, and school kids across the country. And what was in these hot dogs exactly? Well, no one really wanted to ask. Hot dogs were, and still are, an edible collage of pork scraps, beef bits, fat trimmings, and the occasional chicken waltzing in like it owns the place. But when you grind it all up and shove it into a casing, apparently, it's health food. Once the medical world gave hot dogs their unofficial blessing, the food industry smelled opportunity, and it smelled like mustard and profits. Enter the marketing blitz. Brands like Oscar Mayer, Armour, and Swift & Co. wasted no time slapping on lab coats and stethoscopes, figuratively and literally. Print ads began popping up everywhere. Doctor recommended, health on a bun, a wholesome snack for growing boys. One ad showed a cheerful family doctor grilling hot dogs at a picnic captioned, "A meal even mother approves and doctor endorses." It was the 1940s version of influencer marketing, but instead of TikTok teens doing dance challenges, it was old white men in glasses convincing you that frankfurters cure fatigue. Even the American Meat Institute ran public campaigns featuring testimonials from supposed medical experts. They framed hot dogs as highly digestible, easily assimilated, and packed with bodybuilding protein. You'd think they were selling muscle shakes, not leftover pig bits. Some school lunch programs were so convinced they started serving hot dogs 3 times a week. Meanwhile, hospitals began using hot dogs as transitional food, like some kind of meat-based Jell-O bridge between broth and solid meals. The logic was wild. It's soft, so patients won't choke. It's salty, so they'll want to eat it. It's technically food. It became less about whether hot dogs were healthy and more about how easily you could convince people they were. And since this was long before ingredients were labeled or health regulations enforced, companies could say almost anything without anyone pushing back. But of course, this glorious delusion couldn't last forever. By the 1970s, people started asking questions. Suspicious questions, like, what's actually in a hot dog? Why does it have the texture of regret? Should my food really bounce when I drop it? Suddenly, the same food that was served in hospitals was being linked to cancer, heart disease, and, shocker, massive amounts of sodium and nitrates. Studies emerged showing processed meats could increase the risk of colorectal cancer. In 2015, the World Health Organization classified processed meats, including hot dogs, as Group 1 carcinogens. That's the same category as smoking. Imagine, we went from doctor-recommended lunch to might kill you softly with every bite in just a few decades. Public backlash started to swell. Moms demanded better school lunches. Hospitals updated their menus. And the phrase doctor-recommended hot dog disappeared faster than a Costco sample cart. Still, hot dogs never really left. They just changed lanes. Instead of being advertised as health food, they became nostalgic, an emotional comfort. A guilty pleasure. Something you know is bad for you but eat anyway. Because summer. That rebrand worked even better. So why did this happen? Why did the smartest people in medicine sign off on what's essentially a meat smoothie in a casing? Because, just like today, health was a moving target. Back then, people didn't count saturated fat or red ingredient labels. They counted calories and convenience. And the food industry? It's always been a mirror of what we want to believe. If you want to think ice cream is good for your soul, there's a commercial for that. If you want to believe meat tubes can help you recover from surgery, there's a doctor ready to hand you a tray. And hot dogs were the perfect vehicle. Cheap, customizable, easy to market, impossible to explain without laughing. Today, we laugh at the idea of health food hot dogs, but look around, we're still doing it. Keto ice cream, organic cheese puffs, zero sugar soda with 19 ingredients. Maybe in 80 years, people will look back and say, wait, you drank what out of aluminum cans because it was sugar-free? So no judgment to 1930s doctors handing out hot dogs. They were just doing what we all do. Trying to make junk food feel a little less junky. So the next time you fire up the grill, remember, you're not just making lunch. You're participating in medical history. Because once upon a time, that hot dog wasn't junk food. It was a prescription. Now tell me, what other healthy foods do you think we'll laugh at in 50 years? Let me know in the